Today I'm going to show you how to make chocolate chip cookies. And after we make the chocolate chip cookies, I'm going to let them cool a bit and then I'm going to turn them into chocolate chip ice cream sandwiches. So first, of course, I have to wash my hands to get ready for this baking adventure. The recipe that I'm going to use is the Nestle Toll House cookie recipe, and it's found on the back of a package of Nestle Toll House cookies. Now, for those of you that have peanut allergies, the normal, regular Nestle chocolate morsels are made in a facility that has nuts. So if you ever see this yellow bag, okay, yes, it has a fabulous recipe on the back for chocolate chip cookies, but the chocolate inside of it has peanut allergy traces in it, so it's not good for people with nut allergies. Nestle has just put out this chocolate that is made with only 3 ingredients in a facility that is free from nuts. So you can use this type of chocolate if you have nut allergies. You can also use Hershey chocolate, Baker's chocolate, and usually the ShopRite brands or the grocery store brands are made in facilities without nuts. So that being said, I have turned over my bag so that I can use the recipe on the back. This Nestle Toll House recipe is the recipe that I use in class because it's a really good recipe. Ghirardelli chocolate chip recipe is also good. It has a little more vanilla in it. Most chocolate chip cookie recipes are the same. So I'm making a full batch of cookies because the recipe here says that it makes 5.5 dozen cookies, and I'm going to make that because I'm actually going to make these ice cream sandwiches, so I'll actually get 2 dozen ice cream sandwiches. Way more than I need, but they'll be in the fridge. Something fun for when my little nephew comes over or any kids or anything. So I'm going to start off with room temperature butter. Okay, the recipe calls for 1 cup. 1 stick of butter is 1/2 cup, so I need 2. I'm choosing to use unsalted butter, which is, this way I can control the amount of salt in the recipe, and also because it actually has better flavor for baking than the regular salted butter on the store. But if you want to use margarine, you can. If you want to use Crisco, which I would never do, but you could use that. Crisco has got way too much trans fatty acids in there for my blood, but it all depends on what you have at home and what you want to use. As long as it's somewhat of a solid fat, you're good. If you wanted to use lard, okay. Again, the amount of trans fatty acids is pretty high. All right, shall we get started? The first thing we have to do is cream the butter and the sugar together. So the butter, the sugars, we're going to use 2 different kinds of sugars. Scott, can you show the sugars, please? My husband Scott is the cameraman today. This is brown sugar here. Brown sugar is white sugar, granulated sugar, that has molasses added to it, okay? The more molasses that's added to it, the darker the color. So if you ever see dark brown sugar in the store, that's made with a lot of molasses. So if you're ever at home and you have a recipe that calls for brown sugar, but you don't have it, you can always substitute it with white sugar. Or if you happen to have some molasses in the house, you can make your own, which is, so as you can see, I am not using a power mixer, a hand mixer. I wanted to show you how to do this by hand without using any electronic devices. So that way, if you wanted to make this at home, you don't need to have a mixer, a KitchenAid mixer, or any kind of mixer. You can just do this with a spoon and a bowl. Okay, so the first thing is, how do you measure the sugar? When you measure the granulated sugar, you're going to try to overfill it and then shake it until it is level. All right, so this is 1/2 cup. The recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup of granulated sugar. So this is 1/2 cup of sugar. Now 1/2 and 1/4 equals 3/4. So this is how I know I have 3/4 of a cup. Now the recipe also calls for 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. Now when you measure brown sugar, you measure completely differently than you do for white sugar. You have to pack the sugar into the measuring cup. and you're packing it down as if you were if this were sand and you're using it to make a sandcastle, because when you take this out, it should hold its shape. See? So that's 1/4 of a cup, and this is the 1/2 cup again, because the recipe calls for equal amounts of sugar, brown sugar and granulated sugar, 3/4 of a cup for both. So 3/4 for the granulated sugar, and now 3/4 for the brown sugar. Okay. So now all I have to do is cream these together. So when I say cream in baking, cream means blend it together. So I have my butter, it's super nice and soft, and I'm using a nice hearty wooden spoon. And the reason why I'm using a wooden spoon is because it's strong, it's not gonna bend, and it can really help me mash the butter into the sugars and make a nice combination, okay? This, when you're making the cookies by hand, this is always the hardest part, is getting the butter and the sugar to completely blend together and be a nice combination. Yeah. So I'm gonna mix it really hard and as fast as I can. And as you see, as I do it, I'm using my muscles. And I'm getting this nice and combined. Okay, if you look at this now, it looks like it's combined, but it's not good enough. And that's because I can still see hunks of butter. And I don't want to see any hunks of butter when I mix it like this. I want it to be nice and completely smooth. This is a huge mistake that a lot of people make when they make chocolate chip cookies, is they just dump everything together. You don't want to do that. You don't want to have any hunks of butter. That's better. So now we've got our butter and sugars creamed together. It's at this point where I'm going to add my eggs. The recipe calls for 2 eggs. So I crack in 1 egg and I stir that in first. You always want to add your eggs one at a time. Okay. It gets really loose now. Oh yeah, I'm getting a great workout. And now I'm going to do the other egg. I'm also going to add in my vanilla. But I'm going to do that after I get my egg mixed in there. Now, once you've added the raw egg to your batter, you can't taste it anymore. Because raw egg has a bacteria in it called salmonella. And salmonella can cause people to get sick, like foodborne illness, and the symptoms would be nausea, vomiting, fatigue. So don't do it. My vanilla. So this is not your average vanilla. I bought this when I went on vacation this summer. I went to Aruba and I got this vanilla. Usually I really like it, but this one, it's a little aromatic for me. It's floral. And I haven't quite decided if I like it yet, but I'm going to use it. 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Now again, vanilla is a flavoring ingredient, so if you want to use more, you can, but you don't have to. You can use less vanilla than's called for too. This is where most recipes change when they add their vanilla. They add more or less vanilla. Other than that, the rest of the recipe has to remain the same. Okay, I've got that nice and mixed in. Now I need to check for my amounts of dry ingredients. I need 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Baking soda, not baking powder. Baking soda is a leavening agent. This is a chemical leavener, okay? This is what's going to add the rise to the cookie. Not only the rise, it's not the only leavener in there. Because we're mixing this, we're adding air. So with every stir I do, I'm adding air, and air is considered a natural leavener. I also need salt. 1 teaspoon of salt. See how easy this is? And again, I don't have to add that much salt if I don't want to. I can lower it to 1/2 teaspoon. I wouldn't go lower than 1/2 teaspoon now. You can't ever really taste salt in a recipe. It's also used as a flavoring agent. that's why you can adjust it in cookies. All right, so now it's the time to add the flour. So we need, if I remember correctly, 2 1/4 cups of flour. I'm trying to find it on here. Yep, I'm right, 2 1/4 cups of flour. Now, when you measure flour, you never want to just scoop your measuring cup into the flour. You want to spoon it into the measuring cup. Sometimes a recipe will say sifted flour, and that means that it goes through a sieve beforehand. And the sieve helps breaks up the flour and adds more air to your mixture if you're looking to use air as the only leavener or to enhance the air quality of the lift. So if you noticed how I measured the flour, first I scooped some, I overfilled the cup, and then I took a straight edge and I leveled it. Now, I have all sorts of different straight edges. This is called a bench scraper, and I use this to help me clean my counters. I also use it to level. So that's 1 cup of flour, and I'm going to do this again because it needs 2 1/4 cups of flour. Okay, and the 1/4 cup that I used for the sugar, I'm going to use again the teeny tiny cup. Okay, now I'm going to mix this together, and I have to be really careful when I mix this together because the flour will poof out and then it can go all over the place. Especially if you're using a hand mixer or a stand mixer, this is when messes tend to get made. When you start mixing in the flour, it goes poof, and it can make a huge mess. Now that I have the majority of the flour in here and mixed together, I'm gonna add my chocolate chips. I'm gonna add 2 cups of chocolate chips or 1 12-ounce bag. And I know that 2 cups is actually 16 ounces, but when it comes to chocolate chips, a little extra never hurt anybody. Okay, and I'm just using the regular Nestle semi-sweet chocolate because this is for, no one in my house has peanut allergies, and I don't think I'm giving these away to anyone, and if they do, we'll warn them that they may contain peanuts. Some people though, well, doesn't matter. You know what you can eat and what you can't eat by now for peanuts. All right, that's the batter for chocolate chip cookies. Now,
Pause and go.
okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to use this fabulous tool called a cookie scoop. And I'm gonna use this so that all my cookies are the same size because I like to have everything the same size, especially if I'm making cookies, ice cream sandwiches out of these. I don't want one tiny little cookie attached to one big cookie. I want them all to be the same size. So the other really fancy piece of equipment that I have is I forgot to preheat my oven.
What temp?
350 degrees. Okay, your temperature of your oven should be 350 degrees. So, this is a silicone baking sheet. I put this on top of my cookie sheet so that the cookies don't stick to the pan. Okay, chocolate chip cookies don't usually stick to the cookie sheet, and that's because they have a lot of fat in them. Some types of other cookies do, and you would have to grease the cookie sheet. Well, if you're using a silicone baking sheet, you don't need to grease the cookie sheet, even if you have a cookie that says it's supposed to be in a greased cookie sheet. Okay, now I only have 1 silicone baking sheet because I don't want to buy a bunch of them. They're $10, even though I use them all the time. So I also have something called parchment paper. This is what it looks like when you buy it at the grocery store. It could also come in a roll that looks like how the aluminum foil and saran wrap come into plastic wrap. So the parchment paper does the same thing as a silicone baking sheet. It just adds an extra layer of protection. The other thing is, if you notice, my pans are not dark. They're light colored stainless steel, or aluminum actually. The darker the pan, the darker bottom the cookies you're going to have. So if you only have dark cookie pans, you're going to want to invest in some parchment paper because the cookies won't be as dark on the bottom. If you have dark bottom cookies or cookies that are burnt on the bottom, it's probably because of your pans. Okay, so that's something, and pans do lose their oomph after a while. So if you're getting dark bottom cookies, one hint is to use parchment paper. If you're still getting dark bottom cookies with the parchment paper, then you definitely need new pans. You also want to calibrate your oven every once in a while to make sure that your oven is the temperature says that it's going to be, because like every device, it needs a little fine tuning every once in a while. So when you place the cookies on the cookie sheet, you want to place them about 2 inches apart. So what I'm going to do is 3 cookies the short way, the width, and 4 cookies the long way, and that will give me 12 cookies on an average sized cookie sheet. I have to leave room for the cookies to spread out, unless I want them all connected, which I do not. I want these to look super beautiful when they come out. Okay, so I'm doing level scoops, that way I know exactly how big they are. When I do end up putting them into the cookie oven, it's going to be approximately 10 minutes. Sometimes it's 9 minutes, sometimes it's 11 minutes, but it's always 10 minutes. So you always want to set your timer for the least amount. You can always add more time. You can never take the time away. All right, I'm going to put these cookies in the oven, and I will show you what they look like when they come out in 10 minutes.
Filming.
Cleaning as I go. My oven isn't quite the right temperature, so I figured I'd put away all my ingredients, get my dishes over to the kitchen sink, clean my counter space to sanitize so I have a place to put my baked cookies. And one thing I wanted to show you is this tool. This is called a cooling rack. And what you do is you put the baked cookies on top of here so the air can circulate around the entire cookie. It prevents soggy bottom cookies, which I don't think I've ever encountered, but if you bake a lot, I suggest getting one. I have stackable ones, so that way they don't take up a lot of counter space. So, okay. Wow, it smells really good in here. And these cookies are just about done. My timer is about to go off, and as soon as it does, I'm gonna take these. I've been patiently waiting, wanting to look inside, but I haven't, because I know if I do, the heat from the oven is going to escape, and then it will affect the bake time of the cookies. So, 3, 2, 1. All right, notice that these cookies still look very pale. That's what we want. I'm gonna put these in, and I'm gonna set my timer again so that they can go in some more. Now, I can't take these off of the rack just yet. You have to wait between 30 seconds to 1 minute with the cookies on the tray before you remove them. If you try to remove them beforehand, the cookies, once you go to take them off, the cookies will get all mashed and mushy, because the sugar in the oven has caramelized. It's turned to liquid. The sugar turned to liquid when it was in the hot oven, and now as it comes out of the hot oven, the sugar has to recrystallize. So if you give it a few seconds to recrystallize, then when you go to take it off, you will have a beautiful looking cookie. And the longer you leave it on, the cookie sheet, the more stiff it will become, and they will harden as they cool. All right, so now I have to take all these off the cookie sheet, and then I have to let them cool completely before I can turn them into those yummy ice cream sandwiches. Hey, the cookies have cooled. So now I'm going to show you. My fabulous cooling sheets fell over, but thankfully none of the cookies broke. So let me just reach over here to these cookies, because these were the ones that I wanted to use, because they're approximately the same size. So I'm going to show you this. First thing I'm going to do is put down some saran wrap. That was fun. That's just like what would happen in class, because mistakes happen all the time. I'm no professional. I'm going to take my ice cream. I like vanilla, and I have a little mini scooper. I'm going to make 2 mini scoops that are a little big and put them on here like this. Oh yes, maybe 3, because you know what? A little extra ice cream never hurt anybody. Okay, and I'm gonna cover it on top with another cookie. And now to make it fun, I'm going to add some little mini chocolate chip morsels on top, because this is how you get them when you get them from the ice cream truck. And I want to be as cool as the ice cream truck. Not all of them stick. I can press them down. Well, now I'm going to take it and I'm going to wrap it. Oh, baby. And there I have my Chipwich ready to go in the freezer for when my son, who loves these, comes home from work. He can have one, or comes out of his bedroom from work because it's quarantined still. All right, have fun making these and enjoy your Chipwich chocolate chip cookie sandwich, chocolate chip cookie, whatever you want to do recipe. Enjoy.